Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Param Param Ishvaro Guratmeti Murti Beda Vibhagine Vyomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sava Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satiguru Pranatoshmaham Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Page 169, chapter 17, verse 19 to 23. The Brahmin used, not yet fully satisfied, asked further questions to the king. Why are not everyone liberated if their lives are so iridescent with samadhis, these gaps of samadhis? If it be the enlightener, if samadhi is the enlightener, because there was a statement before that you get that by recognizing samadhi or by having those samadhis. But as we know, unless we recognize and you value certain things are going to be neglected or discounted by us, So if it be the enlightener of the unmanifest void of the deep sleep, so it should be available for everyone, even in deep sleep, not to say about those moments of samadhi during the wakeful state. And the Brahmin continues saying, liberation is the direct result of unqualified samadhi, you said before. The self being pure intelligence, why does it not recognize itself and remains always ever liberated? So the self is pure intelligence. Why does it not recognize itself in deep sleep and in those spontaneous samadhis and remains always liberated? Because the self is the pure knowledge, pure intelligence. But it appears as Ishvara, which is pure knowledge, self-knowledge and knowledge in respect to the universe and its laws and principles. But it is through the Jiva Atmas that consciousness appears as the individual self. So the question of bound and to be bound or liberate, how you say? Liberation and, I forgot it. So the question of being bound or liberated is only relevant to the Jiva-Atma, the experiencing entity. And unfortunately, Jiva-Atma is not pure intelligence. We have, a certain intelligence that is pretty much conditioned or influenced by a lot of rajas and tamas that prevents the Jiva-Atma from gaining great wisdom, being a certain reflector, of consciousness to enjoy that pure sattvic mind, with incredible inspiration and potential to contemplate the most profound human questions. So unfortunately, we have a lot of rajas and tamas, and the Jiva-Atma is not really pure intelligent. That's why it does not recognize itself and remains free and go home. If everybody would easily recognize their nature and go home, the universe would collapse. Because it is this ignorance that sustains it. Ignorance is dispelled only by pure knowledge, intelligence, which is samadhi, as you have said. And this is the immediate cause of salvation. So the Brahmin is now lecturing the king, and trying to point out some possible contradictions in the exposition of the king. Please tell me so that all my doubts may be set at rest. So I have answered him a little bit, but let's see now what the great king Janaka says. The king says, I will tell you the secret. The cycle of births and deaths is beginningless, caused by ignorance, which displays itself as pleasure and pain, and yet is only a dream. It's just a superimposition, it's a mirage. But anyhow, the dreamer within the dream gets a disturbed mind, which is unfit for self-knowledge and wisdom. And that's when that began with the creation. Creation is a byproduct of ignorance. And what is ignorance is duality. And what is duality is experiencer and experienced. So this is the most fundamental duality. And that is the cause of ignorance. Because in order for consciousness to become an entity, an experiencing entity, it ends up being limited as the poor Jivatma. So it's limited in all possible means, including his ability of understanding and knowing what's going on, the true nature of reality, and so on. So, and that this ignorance is eternal, immemorial, beginningless, in other words, and it manifests itself as the experience of pleasure and pain. To whom? To the Jivatma. All of these teachings is just for the Jivatma. So Jivatma is going to experience the human consciousness colored by pleasure and pain. It's an experience of consciousness, illuminating one's environment, and experience this disturbance derived of my likes and dislikes, and I like it, I don't like it, I want to gain and maintain, or I want to push it away. No, so all of that is the manifestation of consciousness through the power of mind, the power of Maya, which brings about the Jivatma, which is almost invariably experience this magnet force called likes and dislike, and the pleasures experience as pleasurable experience and painful experience, not knowing that to begin with, everything is just unreal. The wise say that it can be ended only by self-knowledge. What kind of knowledge? By self-knowledge. It's a specific knowledge, which is referred to as wisdom, spiritual wisdom, which requires a certain realization. The realization of what? I am pure limitless consciousness. Aham Brahmasmi Tattvamasi, I am that consciousness. So how this knowledge comes about, only Ishvara knows. Because most people, they have no interest. They have interest in certain experiences. They want to remain as an experiencing entity, even if it is, going into some other locus or dimensions of experience, with a different body and so on. But I don't want to give up my identity as an experiencing entity. So the wise says that the only way to remove this ignorance, the belief that duality is reality, and I have to find a field of experience in which I experience pleasure all the time. I want to go to one of these upper lokas, spiritual punya. So only the realization, tattvamasi, resolves this problem. And then we have seen that the commentary that the aspirant first develops this passion, turns away from all the pleasures of life that have not resolved the human problem. And then as he puts up some little wisdom and effort to move away or to control these extroversions toward objects of pleasures, invariably he meets the scriptures and the teacher of the scriptures. And then he develops the hearsay knowledge, indirect knowledge, in other words. And then in order to experience that knowledge, in order to make that knowledge, his knowledge, in order to make that knowledge a fact, I am that limitless consciousness, always free from Jiva's experience. He needs to ponder over these teachings until all doubts are cleared. Then he applies the knowledge to himself. Oh, no, I want to apply to others. I'm going to become a teacher. Before I was really, benefited by the teachings, very common. Huh? He applies the knowledge, the teachings to whom? To himself, and tries to sense his immortal being as limitless conscious existence, which transcends the body-mind. It comes a point that he succeeds in sense, with his sense feeling, I am limitless, free, unconcerned consciousness. And then later, he keeps remembering these Vedantic teachings, which were imparted by his guru, saying that the self, being unqualified, cannot be differentiated from even God, the Creator. And by contemplating these teachings, he realized his unity with the Creator, and later on with the universal Brahman. This is, in short, the entire course of wisdom, which takes us to liberation. Ignorance cannot be expelled by means of knowledge devoid of such thoughts. For such knowledge is not opposed to anything whatever, including ignorance. Yeah. So ignorance cannot be expelled by those samadhis or deep sleep, because there are no Vedantic thoughts there to dispel or cancel the ignorant thoughts, such as I am the body, mind, and I am small, incomplete, and limited. Knowledge devoid of such thoughts is like canvas. The canvas used in a painting, the canvas remains the same, whatever picture may be painted on it. So this unqualified knowledge is simple light. The objects are manifest by and in it. So it's not enough to have an empty, silent mind. We need to have a mind engaging in those flow of Vedantic Upanishadic thoughts that do the job of canceling our residual doubts in regards to the statements of the Upanishads. Commentary, the mirror is clear and uniform when there are no objects to reflect. The same appears varied by image reflecting it. So the mirror appears clear, we reflect only space, but then there are a lot of parts, a lot of namarupas appearing when they put before, in front of the mirror. The self being pure intelligence and clear, when he's not in contact with the world, it shines as pure luminosity, pure intelligence. This state is called nirvikalpa. And when it is conditioned by thoughts, it's called savikalpa. Okay, that's the definition of nirvikalpa and savikalpa. Nirvikalpa, there are no thoughts, no modifications, and savikalpa, with thoughts, with modifications in consciousness. Ignorance is only that knowledge which is called savikalpa, with thoughts and nothing else. So it depends on the nature and the quality of those thoughts. The problem is not thought. The problem is this thought, I am the body, mind, and the world is real. The world before me is real. That ignorance exists in many ways in the form of cause and effect. And it all begins with the aham, I would say. Continue, and it is the cause, Maya, and it continued as many effects. Pure intelligence, or God the Creator, in his insentient aspect, functions as Maya. And the self-contained entity, Maya, projects ignorance as creation. Again, this ignorance is only ignorance from the standpoint of the Jivatma. There is nothing ignorant in respect to this beautiful projection. But what turns it to become ignorance is to take it to be real. You understand? So it's a beautiful projection, Maya Shakti, you know, and then we perceive it. So this projection is beautiful. It's like James likes to put, beautiful and intelligent, fascinating ignorance. But it becomes ignorance only from the standpoint of the experiencing entity with a certain intellectual faculty that somehow falls for it and takes it to be real. The causal ignorance is said to be of the nature of absence of knowledge in regards to the fullness of one's very nature as the self. The cause of ignorance is said to be the absence of knowledge in regards to our non-dual nature. Okay? I am whole, full, and complete as consciousness. My true nature identity is consciousness. And if I do not know that, I'm going to take my body, mind to be myself. And that's called ignorance. Ignorance, what is ignorance? It's absence of light. What is darkness? Absence of light. What is ignorance? It's absence of knowledge. And this knowledge is a knowledge that has to emerge in the human intellect, but it's rare, and it's even more rare without the help of the scriptures and a proper teacher. Oh, Mark here. We're going to have to begin again from the beginning. Hello, Mark.
Hey, Arlindo.
Hi, you lost the first 20 minutes, but you can catch up with that later on. It was a good flow, a good introductory flow. The causal ignorance is the absence. The ignorance, which is darkness, is but absence of light. It's not really real. Something unsubstantial, such as darkness, does not have a reality on its own, because it depends on the absence of something else, which is knowledge. So what is the reality of ignorance if it is only the absence of knowledge? The self is that consciousness. That is, consciousness should only be whole, full, and complete, free of any and all limitations. For page 171, Mark, verse 31, 34. For it is that which brings about time, and the rest which are the cause of limitation. So this ignorance brings about time and space. How about that? That becomes very philosophical. How time and space comes into play. So this ignorance, I am the body-mind, and the objects are out there at certain distance from me. I can measure those distance. And then as I measure the distance, I have a sense of time and space. That kind of knowledge of the self, which exists as the non-dual, and now that kind of wrong knowledge, bad knowledge of the self, which is I am the body-mind, limited and incomplete, exists as the non-full, whole, and complete self, can alone be causal ignorance of the nature of the I exists here at this place and time. So this is a description of this beginningless ignorance, its absence of knowledge, or here is also being presented in this paragraph as a certain mistaken knowledge or wrong knowledge, bad knowledge. Knowledge, I mean, knowledge, everybody has knowledge. The question is to know if our knowledge is good, not so good, or really bad knowledge. And the bad knowledge is I am the body-mind, the world is real. I experience it, and I was born in such and such date and place. I exist here at this time, and time and space is a reality to me. It happened in my mind. That is the seed of ignorance, which shoots forth the sprout of the body-mind as the individualized self, growing up into gigantic tree, which is the tree of samsara, infinite cycle of birth and death. The cycle of birth and death does not end unless ignorance is put to an end. This can happen only with a perfect knowledge of the self, not otherwise. So now the king goes on to say, such wisdom which can destroy, and only this wisdom has the power to destroy self-ignorance, is clearly of two kinds, indirect self-knowledge and direct self-knowledge. We have seen in the Tripura, Rahasya, many instances of people with indirect knowledge, and they were very smart and clever, knowing everything, but not really benefiting from that knowledge because it was not direct knowledge. What is indirect knowledge? Now I know everything about the self, about Brahman. I have no doubts left. And then what would be the direct knowledge? Now I know everything about myself. I know everything about the self because I am Brahman. I don't know Brahman, I know myself. I know my nature as the self. And furthermore, I know that everything is the self. Everything is Brahman. Everything is consciousness. Knowledge first acquired by the Guru and through him from the scriptures. Nice. So the knowledge comes from the scriptures, but in this case, due to the subtlety of this transfer of knowledge, the scriptures require a teacher, a guru. And through this teacher, the knowledge is transferred to the student. Such indirect knowledge cannot fulfill 100% the object in view, because academic theoretical knowledge alone does not bear fruit. Practical knowledge is necessary, which comes through Samadhi. So again, as we know, this text has a lot of practical, experiential connotations. And working through this text again, it brought to me the idea that Swami Paramarthananda did not work on this text, never exposed these teachings of the Tripura, because it leaves room to a lot of confusion. No? There are a lot of apparently contradictory statements, and you will see here. Now he says, knowledge born of Nirvikalpa Samadhi generates wisdom because it eradicates ignorance and transcends the indirect knowledge, converting it into direct knowledge. Knowledge from Nirvikalpa Samadhi generates wisdom by eradication of either self-ignorance and indirect theoretical knowledge. Okay, so you're going to convert that theoretical indirect knowledge in direct knowledge. No? That objective knowledge is indirect knowledge. I have the knowledge of Brahman, of the self, of God, no? Which is different from the knowledge. Everything is Brahman. Everything is the self, and I am that self. Similarly, experience of causal samadhi in the absence of theoretical knowledge does not serve the purpose either. Now, you see, he does say something, and then he says, but, the famous but. So it's not about having theoretical knowledge which does not fructify as wisdom, through wisdom. But even for those of you who believe that Nirvikalpa Samadhi is the best means to freedom, to moksha, self-knowledge, here he says, the causal samadhi, in the absence of this very theoretical knowledge, does not serve any purpose as far as moksha and self-knowledge. So it appears to be a contradiction. He just say, knowledge born of Nirvikalpa Samadhi is going to produce wisdom by eradicating ignorance and indirect knowledge. It has to be born out of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, but on the other hand, he says that the experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, deprived of the knowledge, the Vedantic, Upanishadic knowledge, does not do the job, does not serve the purpose either. And then he carries on, elaborating a little bit more. He says, just as a man ignorant of the qualities of an emerald cannot recognize the precious stone by the mere sight of it, nor can another recognize it if he has not seen it before. So I don't know the value of certain things, so therefore I can't recognize, because I need knowledge. Knowledge in respect to what? What is really valuable. And then we have to go deeper and deeper to understand what is value. What is the value of the values? So what is the most valuable thing? And then one finally comes to the understanding that mind naturing limitless, full, whole, and complete consciousness is the most valuable thing. And then if I have a Nirvikalpa Samadhi, that may validate my knowledge through that experience, because I entered Nirvikalpa Samadhi with a clear understanding, or the knowledge was there. And that is the trick thing here, because here in this passage, the author here tries to say that you need to have theoretical knowledge, but then you need to have Nirvikalpa Samadhi to convert indirect knowledge, indirect knowledge, which is absolutely not endorsed by Swami Paramarthananda. And most of all our teachers in our tradition. An ignorant man is not qualified to recognize the emerald. He has never known the value of the emerald. Likewise, you experience your consciousness 24/7, but you are not acquainted, familiarized with it, and furthermore, you are not acquainted to it because you never developed a value to consciousness, pure consciousness, which is your nature. We have value for certain thoughts. The thought of my beloved one, that we have great value. Yeah, I think I already played this joke several times. When I was a kid, I fell in love with the famous Teresa, and I was in a constant samadhi because I was absorbed with that thought. So we have value for certain things, such as a nice romantic love story. But we don't have a value for that which is the most valuable thing. We need to learn it, and we are not attracted to these teachings unless we had already developed a certain value for the knowledge. I am limitless consciousness, free and independent of my human experience. We never come close to these teachings unless we have already a pre-developed value for self-inquiry and self-knowledge. It's like meditation. You never become a good meditator if you cannot meditate to begin with. You have to have already a value for a silent mind, and at the same time, the capacity to close your eyes and after sometimes experience a silent mind and the peace that comes with it. So you need to have a meditative state to go into meditation and later on into Upasana. Yeah? So you need to have a value that you brings from previous births. Value for what? For the most valuable thing, which is self-knowledge or enlightenment. Otherwise, I will never come close neither to the scriptures nor to the teacher. So this theory, this theoretical knowledge must be transcended with practice in order that the man might become an expert in the theoretical knowledge. But as we know, even if you know everything about the scriptures, you remain intelligently ignorant, self-ignorant. Self-ignorance cannot be eradicated by the best of all academic knowledge in respect to the scriptures, or by those deep sleeps and casual samadhis of an ignorant man. But if the man has got the knowledge, and the knowledge was fructified as direct knowledge, and then samadhi is natural. Samadhi becomes sahaja samadhi. Again, lack of attention is a serious obstacle, he's saying to the Brahmin. For a man looking up at the sky cannot identify the individual constellations. Even a learned scholar is no better than a fool if he does not pay attention when a thing is explained to him. So, one-pointedness of mind, focus. So, attention to what? To those moments in which you feel absolutely full and satisfied and try to investigate what happened in that moment. And then you will see that, you are tapping your very nature. Tap into your very nature as consciousness, which has the fragrance of satisfaction, fullness, purna. Yeah? We need to be able to recognize and pay attention when these teachings are explained to us. On the other hand, the man sought not a scholar, but yet attentive, having heard of all the verses. Here he's presenting another analogy. A man sought not a scholar, but very attentive, having heard all about the planet Venus, goes out in confidence to look for it, knowing how to identify it, and finally discovers it, and so is able to recognize the same whenever he sees Venus again. So academic, you don't need to be a scholar. No? You don't have to have this knowledge to perfection. You don't need to study all the Upanishads, all the Vedantic texts. Bhagavad Gita, for example, is enough. Tripura is enough if we are highly qualified. So we don't need to be academic scholar. And he says that even someone who knows very little about the scriptures, but being very attentive in one of those moments, may be able to recognize one's nature as full, whole, and complete consciousness. No? Identify it, remembering the teachings, and holding the knowledge at all times, retaining the knowledge. Inattentive people, what is inattentive people? People with disturb the mind or disperse the mind, just jumping from one thing, another thing, and missing those moments. Inattentive people are simply fools who cannot understand the ever-recurring samadhis in their day-to-day experiences of life. They are like a man ignorant of the treasure under the floor of his house, who begs for daily something. I am a beggar, I have no money, and I have a treasure under the floor of my house. So what's the difference? What makes me a beggar? The ignorance in regards to my inner treasure under the floor of my house. So knowledge is everything. So you see that samadhi is useless to such people. The intellect of babies is always in samadhi, unmodified, and yet they never realize the self. The Vikalpa samadhi clearly will never eradicate ignorance. Oh my God, don't confuse me, Mr. King Janaka. Huh? Nirvikalpa samadhi clearly will never eradicate ignorance. Big contradiction, because he was saying before that Nirvikalpa samadhi was going to dispel ignorance. Therefore, in order to destroy ignorance, you need Savikalpa samadhi. So a lot of statements in one direction, and then he comes and he says, okay, so I was compromising the truth here and there, but now I'm going to tell you something that you're not going to like. If you are a Nirvikalpa samadhi junkie, know that you need Savikalpa samadhi, not Nirvikalpa samadhi. And what is Savikalpa samadhi? Is samadhi engaged in thoughts. And which kind of thoughts? What kind of thoughts? Deliberating, final declarations of the Upanishads, which are the Mahavakyas, which the terms and states our identity as pure limitless consciousness, and presenting the support, the logic supporting it. So we need Savikalpa, he says. Only Savikalpa alone will do it. God inherent as the self is pleased. And now he changed a little bit the subject here. God, Brahman, the creator, whatever, inherent as the self in all beings is pleased by meritorious actions, meaning to say, actions that produce spiritual merits. God, which is the system, is going to benefit those who have the merits of dharmic proper actions, which continues through several births, after which the desire for liberation downs and not otherwise, even though millions of births may be experienced. This is very nice. So here the king is saying that the self, or God, or Brahman, is inherent as the self in all beings. And this Brahman, this God, is pleased by anyone who has purified the mind and brought about meritorious mental conditions of mental qualifications, which are spiritual punya. So he is very pleased when he sees its children growing, purifying, refining, and becoming qualified to understand and be free. And these merits produced by dharmic proper actions, they fructify gradually and they continue through several births. Interesting. So we search for liberation here because we have meritorious punyas, spiritual punyas, that are fructifying this lifetime. And they have been running through the system through several incarnations, several births. And then now I am a seeker of moksha, a seeker of liberation, a seeker of self-knowledge. It has gone through several births, our teachings say. Only then the desire for self-knowledge and liberation will dance on one's intellect, not otherwise. We need to go through a process of actions that produce spiritual meritorious punya. And what is the best punya? The punya we need: mental, emotional, intellectual purification and refinement of this body-mind in a way that after many births going through pleasures and pains, favorable and difficult situations, one is going to strive for self-knowledge and liberation. All of all the things in creation, to be born a sentient being requires merit. So now the king goes and talks about the concept of the human birth is a privilege. It's an indication of certain merits. All of things in creation, to be born a sentient human being requires good luck. He did not say human being, but he's talking to human beings. And I have been trying to talk Vedanta to my chickens, and they don't care. They only want food, real food. So evidently he's talking about human beings. To be born a sentient human being is a great privilege. It requires good luck. What is good luck? Merit. Even so, to acquire a human body requires considerable merit. Now I understood. He was talking that even my chicken, my cat, my dogs, they are sentient beings. This requires merits in the process of karma. No? And then says, to acquire human body requires even more merits, while it is out of the ordinary for human beings to be endowed with both virtuous tendency and a sharp intellect, in other words, qualification of a certain degree that brings about the fourth human pursuit, which is the pursuit of moksha. It's very rare, he say here. It's rare to be born a sentient being. It's rare to be born a human body. It requires good luck or merits, punya. And it's very rare for a human being to be endowed with a desire for self-knowledge and liberation. He did not say that. He says it's very rare to find someone to be endowed with all the qualifications, virtuous tendency, and a sharp intellect. So the tendency here is the wisdom which sits in one's causal body, and the sharp intellect is there shining in the subtle body so that one can process experience, converting it into more and more wisdom. Observe, O Brahmin, that the mobile creation, the mobile universe is a very small fraction of the immobile. Immobile. So we have the world, the mineral world, the vegetable world, and the animal and the human world. So some of these objects in the world, they are inert and some are sentient. The sentient ones, most are not mobile. A few of them are mobile. And those mobile sentient beings are just a small fraction of the totality of objects or totality of jivas or sentient beings. Most human beings are little more than animals. Ooh, bad news. We see it. We clearly see it in the world we live. And it's even more dangerous than the other animals, because the other animals, I have to say that I'm a little bit, I have a romantic feeling toward the animals, but sometimes I see them being so cruel that I say, oh my God, no, they are not much better than us. We tend to say, we are not much better than them, but now I'm looking more like, they are not much better than us. Most human beings are just like animals, very ignorant in respect to Dharma and Adharma, good and evil, right and wrong. This is the most fundamental viveka, discernment, this discrimination that we need to grow through this exercise of viveka, the viveka between Dharma and Adharma, good and evil, right and wrong, especially when we live in a time in which these values have been largely reversed. A lot of people is confusing good and evil, right and wrong, fair and unfair, justice and injustice, good and bad, right and wrong. Of sensible people, the best part runs after the pleasures of pain. So of all human beings, most are running after of sensory pleasures of life. They want to gain and fulfill their desires for set pleasures. I feel learned people stained with the long for heaven after death. Very nice. I feel people who got in contact with some spiritual philosophy or teachings or religions. They learned those philosophies, and they develop a longing for heaven. I want to go to those higher locus, higher dimensions in which vibrations are better and frequencies are better, and there is only justice and love and blah, 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 blah. Because all the souls there are more developed. So I feel learned people, they are going to say, I'm done with these pleasures gained by the sense. No? I have experienced all kinds of pleasures, and they are all turned bitter, from sweet at the beginning and bitter, and they remain eternally unsatisfied. I'm done with trying to fulfill all these desires for sense pleasures. And then I become what? I become a religious person, and now I want to invest in paradise. I want to buy a piece of real estate in one of these superior locus. And how am I going to pay? What kind of the money? The money is good spiritual or religious actions here that are going to purify your mind gradually, dharmic actions. And then, when you leave this old body, and then you're going to have some good experience. Why? Because you're going to experience your body, mind, your mental condition, or your causal, subtle mind complex. You're going to experience yourself in one of these locus, and you have a nicely purified, refined, resolved mind. Therefore, you have a good time, a good dream. So a few people want to run to one of those locus. Most of the people remain stuck trying to squeeze pleasures from objects, sensory objects. Of the remaining, very few of what's left after people want to go to heaven, and people want to enjoy the objects of sense pleasures. And then there is another group which remains that want something else, but they are not qualified for self-knowledge and liberation. They will never be able to comprehend the teachings revealing the non-dual nature of the I, of the self, which is the nature of oneness of the creator and the entire creator. They don't have the qualifications what to do. If you don't have the qualifications, you are not prepared for the Upanishads. Maya, which means excess of ragas and dveshas, is still influencing your intellect. And you are not going to be able to hold the theoretical knowledge, and much less to convert that into practical self-knowledge, as in the language of the king here. How can this poor folk, held in the grip of Maya, extend their weak sight to the sublime truths of oneness, of conscious existence, oneness of the self? they are under the grip of Maya, how they are going to develop the sight. The sight here is not to see the color and the shape of the self. The sight here is a sublime sight born out of a vision, understanding, a vision, understanding, the third eye, the eye of pure knowledge that allows me to gain this clear knowledge, understanding in regards to the non-dual nature of the self. Oneness. People blind by Maya cannot see this truth, and they are never going to be able to see this truth. Even when some people rise so high in the scale as to understand the entire rational aspect of the Upanishads, misfortune prevents their being convinced of it. Doubts are going to remain. Again, it's put here as a misfortune, but it is mental impurities. Yeah? Mental extroversion, residual ragas and dveshas, desires and fears. I understood everything, but my mind is not pure enough to hold this knowledge and internalize this knowledge because it's still under the attack of my desires and fears. And desires and fears are going to disturb the mind. The mind is not going to be able to convert this theoretical knowledge in direct knowledge. This misfortune, which is desires and fears, are going to prevent me to claim, to accept, embrace, and claim I am this limitless consciousness and not the limit body-mind. Due to my desires and fears that are going to be operating as a great force the power, this is very nice, the power of this unresolved and cancelled desires and fears, likes and dislikes, vasanas, is still there, sitting, trying to dictate one's human experience. It's a force which is greater than the force acquired by the theoretical knowledge. I have a theoretical knowledge. I got the academic knowledge revealed by the scriptures, and it's very powerful, but there is another power called Maya, which is ignorance, which manifests, as we have seen in the beginning of the class today, as desires and fears, ragas and dveshas, likes and dislikes that need to be met. Otherwise, my mind cannot really do this conversion of intellectual knowledge, academic knowledge into direct, immediate self-knowledge. Knowledge, if strictly followed, knowledge, if fully internalized, must put an end to one's likes and dislikes. Knowledge, if is fully internalized, claimed as my practical, direct understanding, conviction, puts an end to desires and fears, likes and dislikes. It's like anything else. Why? Because of the nature of this knowledge. The nature of this knowledge is I am Purna. I am full, whole, and complete. I am the one self, the only reality. There is nothing other than consciousness. And since I'm one without a second, I am whole, complete, because there is only me, there is only I, consciousness. So this knowledge, what it's going to do is going to burn those desires and fears, likes and dislikes, those force, like anything else. Knowledge, once fully internalized, assimilated and internalized, indeed puts an end to desires and fears which flourish on the denial of the non-dual nature of the I am. And don't recognize the oneness, which is synonymous of non-duality. There is only one. There are not two selves, three selves, billions of selves, infinite numbers of selves. There is only one self. So knowledge, once fully internalized, it's the best remedy to put an end to this ignorance, desires for completion, because this knowledge is the knowledge in regards to my nature, always ever complete. They try to justify their practical actions by fallacious argument, which is simply a waste of time. Okay, so these desires are great. They somehow they occupy most human beings' mind. Self-knowledge is the only remedy to cancel or to minimize the force of these desires and fears, likes and dislikes, until you have this knowledge. But then in the end, the king says they try to justify their practical actions, searching for objects of desires, doing things to gain the results of those actions, bringing about fallacious arguments, which are simply a waste of time. So there is, as a teacher, I know, there are students or other people who want to have an argument in regard to self-inquiry and self-knowledge. And those arguments may be very smart and intelligent, but it's so far off the mark, you understand? It's simply a waste of time. Inscrutable are the ways of Maya, which veils the highest realization for the pure jivas, for the pure human beings. It is as if they throw away the raw gem, the precious gem they have in their hands, thinking it to be a mere stone. I have often these situations with a few people I associate with for different reasons, not my students, but they associate for different reasons, and they have no clue of what is valuable to me and where I stand in respect to that. And it's like, okay, so you have me here, so you want to associate with me. Okay, so what do you want? Oh, just little things, just chatting, Oh, we could get together for a party. Oh, no, thank you, I'm too busy. Oh, and somehow some people still hang around. But they don't know that they have something which is very precious, but they are not asking for. You understand? They don't know. It's like the guy. They throw the precious stone back to the river, not knowing the value of such a stone. So there's nothing more precious that the revealed scriptures. But it's so rare someone who values it, especially nowadays. Nowadays we live in the samsara, which is dominated by materialism. And if it was only the physical materialism, physical mundane samsara, but we have the spiritual materialism, the spiritual samsara, which is, again, a huge obstacle. Only those people with great devotion to self-inquiry and self-knowledge, the inquiry into the nature of God, of the self, or awareness, or consciousness, is going to please the self due to their effort. Such can discern well, discriminate well, and come on the other side with this hard and fast self-knowledge. Again, devotion to the truth. You don't need to be devoted to any God. You don't need to be devoted to any guru. But if the guru is a good expositor of the truth, so you can have a sense of superimpose the truth on the guru and the guru on the truth, because the guru is revealing the truth. Understand? And then you have a certain sense of devotion. But devotion is devotion to the truth. Devotion to the Creator, devotion to your very nature. This is the truth. The truth is not about the truth behind the curtains of all these things happening here and there. No, the truth is the truth about your very nature. And if you look for your nature is going to be pleased. And then it's going to come out behind the curtain and say, oh, nice to meet you, my fellow. I was waiting for you here. And by the way, these curtains are not real. No. Okay. We meet again next Thursday, same time. Ishvara willing, of course. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mark came in and went out again.
Yeah.
Okay, doke. Our great Sangha. So we are small, but we like to do some deep divings. Namaste.
Namaste.